I work for the University of San Diego. I work for their men's golf program. I've been up there for about 3 years now, and so what we're going to talk about today is just the difference between sort of successful golfers and unsuccessful golfers, and kind of discuss, the difference between the two. So just a little bit about me. I am a golfer. I like to play golf. I play golf pretty much my entire life, and I'm actually fairly accomplished at it. I'm a two-time Oakland Athletic League champion, career low, 3 under par. I've attempted to qualify for the U.S. Open, U.S. Amateur, attempted to play in college, things like that. Golf didn't end up working out as a profession because I hurt myself, so I decided to go in sort of a different direction in the mental skills route. And so for the past 2.5 years, I've worked for the University of San Diego. And during this time, we have been lucky enough to be ranked as high as 15th nationally. We've won 14 titles, won 7 individual titles, reached the national championship in the 2010-2011 season, and had 1 Penn Collegiate All-American. Now when I came in, I had this kind of expectation of what being a consultant was going to be like. I thought that all of these athletes would have very unique sort of issues, very unique sort of problems, and it would be my job to try and figure out, how to fix it. Realistically, however, athletes are really quite similar. I realized very quickly that the problems that I was dealing with on a day-to-day basis were pretty much the same. And I determined that successful athletes and ultimately unsuccessful athletes each possess very unique traits. And so I kind of set out to figure out why this is, or what this is about. And so I narrowed it down into 3 main ideas that are sort of interrelated. The first is going to be expectation. So realistic versus unrealistic. The next is confidence. So high confidence versus low confidence. And then self-talk. So positive and negative self-talk. So let's start with expectations. In high school, the accomplished athlete is really going to be far and away better than a majority of the other athletes around them. They may be the best player in their area, city, state, etc. At USD, we have players who have been the best player in entire countries. We've had best players in states. So these players, for all intents and purposes, throughout high school, throughout their amateur career, have been the absolute best of the best. They've been highly recruited. They've been told time and time again that you're the best. You are better than the rest, and as a result, they begin to sort of internalize this. Lots of winning. So they are going to win lots of events because their athletic skill is better than those around them. As a result, they're going to have a high perceived ability. They're going to think very highly of their athletic talent. Ultimately, they are a big fish in a small pond. They have very limited competition. Really, they just kind of take care of business. But once they get to college, however, these expectations can either stay the same or they can change. My experience is the athletes who are successful are able to sort of adapt these expectations. They realize that the dynamic of college golf is much different than the dynamic of high school golf, that the talent pool is far deeper, that the challenge of going out and winning 5, 6 times a year is probably not realistic. However, the ones who don't figure it out, the ones who don't want to change, that's where you get into problems. Because ultimately, the higher the competition level, the less an athlete is going to win. And if you haven't set yourself up, you're going to become a very small fish in a very big pond. Now, how does that play into confidence? Well, if we go back to the idea of perceived ability, high school is sort of the cracks in the foundation. Again, more talent when compared to peers. They have more wins than losses, so this perceived ability is far higher. But when you get to college, it is all dependent on results. They haven't developed an intrinsic sort of self-efficacy, if you will. So kind of going to the presentation earlier, that they are largely dependent on results to feel confident about their ability or feel good about themselves. However, if they're going to lose more than they win, that's not very effective. That's not very efficient. Now, is it? Ultimately, what this does is this is going to begin to lead to negative self-talk. Guys will actually begin to put more pressure on themselves because they expect that they should be better. They say, I've made it to college, I'm on a Division I golf program, I should be playing better than this. I should be winning more. I should be shooting lower scores. What's the problem with that thought, though? There's a lot of variables at play here. It's not as simple as, I'm in college, I should be better, I should win more. So that internalized pressure makes things a lot more difficult. And ultimately, this lack of improvement kind of reinforces that negative view of self. So it's almost like a negative feedback loop where if you have very high expectations, but you don't live up to those expectations, your self-confidence is going to decrease. As your self-confidence decreases, you're going to begin to put more pressure on yourself, leading to more negative self-talk, which ultimately sort of reinforces that negative self-confidence idea. So it kind of snowballs and gets worse and worse. Really, at this point, if you haven't addressed it, if you haven't been able to work on it, I like to think of it as sort of a house in a storm. If you don't have that foundation set of, expectations, confidence, things like that, when things get difficult, when you're not playing your best, you're going to crumble. So let's think about some intervention strategies, ways that we can help these guys be a lot more successful. The first is going to be developing positivity, because really, these guys need to understand that in golf especially, you're going to have far more failures than you're going to have successes. And so what I like to do is, first I try and like to kind of frame the concept. So if we can pick out positives from any sort of event, even if they shoot, 80, 90, okay, what did you do well? Daily homework. This is something that I really like to do a lot, is I ask my athletes to basically write down one or two positive things from either the day, the round of golf that they played, et cetera, because I think our society in a lot of ways, it's very natural for us to look to the negatives. It's easier. And so what we do is we just naturally start picking out the negatives. But if we can start to notice the positives, one or two a day, well, it kind of snowballs. It's easier to pick out the positives. And so when you're not playing well, when you're not being as successful, well, it's a little bit easier to deal with that. Redefine success. So each of us is going to have a very unique definition of success. Personally, my view of success is a lot of effort-based, doing the best job that I can. But a lot of people's view of success is winning. It's very outcome-based. If you can get your athlete to focus more on showing improvement, developing, that's something that they have control over. That's never going to change. You can always get better, you can always improve. You can't always win. Process over outcome. I'm a firm believer, going back to sort of the idea of things that we have control over, that we have control over the process. Point A, point B, point C, point D. We don't really have control over the outcome. We can shoot a personal best, or run a personal best, but that doesn't guarantee that we're going to win. So again, it goes back to redefining that success. What is important here? Is it going to be the things that we have control over, or is it going to be the things that we don't have control over? Again, you focus on the things you have control over, because they are ultimately 100% within our control. Just a couple final thoughts. Changes don't happen overnight. For any of you who have worked in a consulting setting, worked with athletes. It's not easy. It takes time, and especially for a sport like golf, you got to be patient. You know, that's the biggest piece of advice that I can give, is that they don't happen overnight. You're going to take 2 steps forward, 3 steps back more often than not, and you need to remind your guys that, hey, it takes time. Be patient. In the long run, we're trying to create changes, and changes don't happen overnight. Interestingly enough, this problem generally happens with better players. You don't normally see this in the lower level athlete, because their expectations are probably a little more realistic than the elite athlete. And again, it goes back to sort of those expectations. Good athletes, good golfers, they're going to expect to do better. They're going to have sort of this missing link, or this wrong expectation. So that's an interesting little tidbit. Another interesting thing is that you'll see this happen not only from the high school to college level, but even from the college to high school level, or college to professional level, excuse me. And it's probably 10 times more challenging from the college to professional level. Again, because if you think of high school versus college, in each city or state, you might have, 2, 3, 4 really accomplished players. Well, when you get to college, every player on that team is one of those 3, 4 top athletes. Now when you get to the professional ranks, every professional golfer is the top. They are the best of the best from each university. So if you aren't, comfortable with your expectations, if you haven't set your expectations properly, you're in for a very rude awakening. And so that's that. We will save time for questions afterwards, I think. But thanks.